General Dwight Eisenhower represents the deep joy of a nation moving toward peace once again. Part of this feeling is the kind of welcome any hometown might give to a favorite son who has done well, but beyond that it stands as a testimony to the gratitude felt in every corner of the Allied world for the man who stewarded the crusade to victory. His crusade included many battles and many triumphs, yet it found its greatest symbol in one day above all others: D-Day, June 6, 1944. The invasion of Fortress Europe was among the greatest military undertakings of all time. The fate of the war depended on the outcome of this bold effort because so much hope had been tied to the success of this adventure. The architect of that success discovered that the hearts of the people were open to him from Europe all the way to the town of his boyhood, where the story of Dwight David Eisenhower, the man, first began. After the war, Abilene, Kansas was a busy and proud town of nearly 7,000 people located in the heart of the western wheatland. It was typical of the kind of town described by the phrase grassroots. Its streets and buildings showed evidence of a living and growing America. One of its proudest buildings, the Eisenhower Museum, was visited daily by citizens from all parts of the country. Inside, the museum depicts the life of Dwight Eisenhower from childhood onward through a series of murals. From infancy, his life carried the flavor of grassroots America. Eisenhower was born in 1890 in Denison, Texas, to parents whose families had migrated to Pennsylvania from Europe and later to the Midwest. His parents had lived in Abilene before his birth, and they returned there when he was still an infant. It was in Abilene that he grew to maturity through a childhood that was active, eager, and happy, sharing these experiences with his family. His boyhood included sports as an important part of life. While an active life mattered, the greatest single staple of the Eisenhower family was religious observance. On the bedroom wall shared by Dwight and his brother Edgar, among simple testaments of faith, were the words, "Thy will be done." It was a home filled with patriotism as well as faith, and with respect for intellectual pursuits. At age 20, he left Abilene to attend the military academy at West Point, where many great Americans have begun their march into history. He graduated in 1915 and was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the infantry. A new phase of life began for Eisenhower. In the summer of 1916, as a newly promoted first lieutenant stationed at Fort Sam Houston, Texas, he married Mamie Geneva Dowd of Denver. At the same time, events in Europe were shaping a new phase of life for the entire world. World War I gave many future generals their first combat experience, but Eisenhower was not among them. Instead, the war placed him in command of a tank training center in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, where he trained troops of the new Tank Corps for overseas duty. He received the Distinguished Service Medal for his performance, but the war ended before he was able to go to Europe. In the late 1920s, after graduating from the Command and General Staff School, Major Dwight Eisenhower traveled to Europe for the first time. He was stationed in France to prepare a guidebook on American battlefields across the continent. The 1930s brought additional assignments, ending with his service under General Douglas MacArthur in the Philippines. For 4 years he worked alongside MacArthur, Commander-in-Chief of the Philippine Army, helping the Commonwealth government develop plans for military defense. When he was ordered back to the United States in December 1939, Lieutenant Colonel Eisenhower went to Fort Lewis, Washington, to serve as executive officer of the 15th Infantry Regiment. During the dark spring of 1940, German armored divisions pushed through Holland and Belgium while the Luftwaffe spread destruction across Europe's skies. France collapsed and Britain stood alone. The United States passed the Selective Service Act to prepare for what inevitably lay ahead, and it became Colonel Eisenhower's responsibility to help with that preparation. In 1940, he became Chief of Staff of the 3rd Division, and his diligence and hard work later led to his appointment as Chief of Staff of the 9th Corps. In the summer of 1941, Colonel Eisenhower became Chief of Staff to General Walter Kruger, whose newly organized Third Army was preparing for the most realistic war maneuvers ever held by American troops. During these maneuvers across the Louisiana countryside, while America raced against time to train its growing army of citizen soldiers, Eisenhower worked to develop a defense plan against an invading mechanized force. After the maneuvers, he was promoted to Brigadier General. Within days, Japan's sea attacked Pearl Harbor, and from that moment forward the fate of the nation and the fate of General Dwight Eisenhower became closely connected. Soon after the war began, Eisenhower was called to Washington, where he worked in the War Plans Office of the War Department. Among the goals formed at that time was the strategic decision to eventually cross the English Channel. Since a full Channel invasion was impossible before 1944 and immediate offensive action was necessary, the Allies launched the 1942 invasion of North Africa under Eisenhower's command. The goal was to capture the main ports between Casablanca and Algiers. Troops landed along the North African coast in late November. Eisenhower hoped to advance quickly east along the Mediterranean and capture Bizerta and Tunis, but unfavorable circumstances, including severe weather, forced him to delay the final assault. American forces under Omar Bradley captured Bizerta, while the British First Army took Tunis. These victories ended Axis control in Africa. The Allied forces proudly celebrated their success. Eisenhower himself said the greatest result was improved Allied unity and the creation of a combat team built on growing confidence and trust. The successful campaign brought Eisenhower worldwide recognition as a great leader, though he believed this recognition proved that free men could unite and achieve victory against difficult odds. The next campaign, the invasion of Sicily in summer 1943, reinforced this idea. Afterwards, the Allies prepared for the invasion of Italy. Troops under General Mark Clark's Fifth Army established a beachhead despite overwhelming German resistance and captured Salerno and the port of Naples. Although heavy fighting continued, these victories achieved the first major objectives of the Italian campaign and placed Allied forces on European soil while tying down German troops away from the future cross-channel invasion. After the Tehran and Cairo conferences, General Dwight Eisenhower was chosen to command the coming invasion of Europe and became widely known as the Man of the Hour. The Eisenhower Museum later depicted major moments of the crusade that liberated Europe. His orders from the combined chiefs of staff were simple: land in France and destroy German ground forces. However, enormous effort was required to carry out these orders. German defenses along the French coast were extremely strong, and 58 German divisions were positioned in France. Preparation for the invasion required constant training and coordination. Despite the overwhelming challenges, preparations continued through early 1944. After a one-day delay due to weather, D-Day finally arrived. Eisenhower visited airborne troops before the invasion and later said they appeared confident and joked that he had no reason to worry. On D-Day, with the war's outcome uncertain, 500,000 troops crossed the stormy sea. British, Canadian, and American forces landed along the French coast and secured positions. Within a week, Eisenhower praised the armies for surpassing his highest hopes. Less than 2 months later, Allied forces broke through the hedgerows around Saint-Lô and launched a rapid advance across France led by General George S. Patton's armored forces. Paris was liberated, followed by Belgium and advances toward Germany. The German counterattack in the Ardennes, known as the Battle of the Bulge, temporarily slowed progress, but Allied troops held firm and eventually pushed the enemy back. With the crossing of the bridge at Remagen in March 1945, German defenses were critically damaged. Allied forces then cleared remaining resistance west of the Rhine, while large numbers of German soldiers surrendered. Victory finally came with Germany's surrender on May 7, 1945. Eisenhower credited the Allied soldiers and support personnel for this victory, praising the unity, skill, loyalty, and devotion of Allied forces and honoring leaders from multiple nations. He emphasized that the true hero of the war was the common soldier, G.I. Joe, along with those serving in the air, Navy, and merchant marine forces. After the European war ended, Eisenhower returned home to celebrations across Allied nations and received a hero's welcome in his hometown. Though his military success could have ended his public life, America still needed his leadership. He succeeded General Marshall as Army Chief of Staff and believed global peace depended on a strong United States. He traveled worldwide to support American troops and global stability. On February 7, 1948, after 36 years of service, he left active military duty. He soon accepted the presidency of Columbia University, hoping to focus on education, but world events led him back into global leadership. The creation of NATO required strong leadership, and Eisenhower was chosen to lead it. In 1950, he returned to Europe to command NATO forces against emerging Soviet threats. He worked to rebuild European confidence and strengthen military unity among free nations. After more than a year, he transferred command to General Matthew Ridgway, leaving behind a strong alliance structure that supported continued peace. This marked the final chapter of Eisenhower the soldier. History also records Eisenhower the statesman, who led his nation into a period of prosperity and goodwill unmatched in history and strengthened the country in both war and peace. The roles of warrior and statesman were united in one remarkable man, Dwight David Eisenhower, a remarkable life and legacy.